All right, guys, we're on a roll Thursday morning. We're going to finish the week strong. Thursday is my favorite day of the week. I usually, during the school year, we have a Bible study where we meet live on Thursdays. We're taking a little break in the summer. I'll remind you as we get closer to starting it. But you should join our Facebook community anyway. It's a vibrant community where we try to pray for one another. I pray for you guys. You're my YouTube contingency here and love checking in with you. Today's Power Minute, which is our online devotional here, it's called Are You Listening? Our verse is 1 Samuel 3:10. Speak, for your servant hears. Those are the words of Samuel. Of course, here's what I wrote about that. In order to be used by God, you have to remain in a posture that is willing to hear from God. When Samuel was a child and before he became a mighty prophet, he had to learn to hear from God. The first few times the Lord called Samuel by name, Samuel did not recognize God's voice. With some help from Eli, his mentor, Samuel learned that even when before we're too familiar with God's voice, comes a posture that welcomes his voice in our life. Speak, Lord, for your servant hears. The words that Samuel spoke ring through the ages and tug at our hearts today. Samuel's posture, even when he was confused about God's voice, was one of humility and servanthood. His words reflected a heart that was already willing to do whatever it was that the Lord would ask of him. Do you have a heart that seeks to hear God's voice? Does your posture reflect your willingness to do whatever it is that God asks you to do? Get ready, because we serve a God who speaks. Now, admittedly, many of you have been emailing me in the last weeks and have said, hey, why can't I hear God's voice in my life? Or I used to hear God's voice. And listen, some of it is simply because we're not sitting in a posture to hear. And if we could approach God with this posture, God, I want to hear you. You speak, we're listening. I promise you, God longs to speak to us, and he does it through his word. I believe this Power Minute has been used by God to remind you of the voice of God in your life. I often find that God is trying to speak to me in many different ways. Sometimes what I'm looking for isn't how he's speaking. And so it is as I attune my heart to him more, as I quiet my mind and my soul more to him, empty my schedule of all the distractions, put the phone away, do some of those things that are frankly standing in the way of hearing him. That's when my listening gets best. And so I will pray for you. If you're trying to hear from God, open his word, start reading it. He is speaking. He speaks. That's how God communicates with us. And he does it regularly and consistently and encouragingly and lovingly. And so let's encourage one another in this. If you would like prayer in this matter, leave me a comment or send me an email and know that I am praying for you today. All right. I'll see you again tomorrow.